If Parliament wanted to calm the colonies, they chose the most chaotic way possible to do it. Repeal the taxes? That's great. But the same day it repeals the taxes, it declares,
Parliament assembled, hath, and of right ought to have, full power and authority to make laws and statutes, of sufficient force and validity to bind the colonies and people of America in all cases whatsoever.
To the colonists, it felt like someone apologizing while stepping harder on your foot. And then came 1767, a year that said, "You thought that was bad? Hold my tea." The Townshend Acts introduced new taxes on everyday goods, and London expected mild grumbling at worst. Instead, America erupted. Royal officials ran for their lives. Tax collectors received the dreaded tar and feather makeover, and the term Patriot became the badge of honor for anyone ready to push back. But not everyone wanted revolution for breakfast. Those who preferred British order over American chaos became known as Loyalists, forming the other half of a suddenly divided society. New England, of course, took the drama to the next level. A rebellious squad calling themselves the Sons of Liberty rose to prominence, led by Samuel Adams, who could turn any inconvenience into a political crisis. They were joined by merchant smuggler John Hancock, Dr. Joseph Warren, and Paul Revere, who somehow found time to be both a silversmith and a full-time alarm system for the revolution. The tension was no longer a simmer. It was a rolling boil, and Parliament had no idea the pot was about to overflow. If colonial tension were a bonfire, Boston in 1770 was the spark everyone saw coming, but no one stopped. For years, the city had simmered with Patriot energy, ever since the Stamp Act convinced Bostonians that taxes were basically personal insults. By 1768, having British soldiers quartered in town was like adding powder to a fire. Loud, messy, and guaranteed to explode. On March 5th, an argument in the street escalated into a tense standoff. Angry locals, snowballs flying, rocks bouncing off muskets, and one terrified British detachment realizing they might not make it home for dinner. Shots rang out, 5 colonists fell, and instantly, the Boston Massacre was born. Less a battle, more the perfect propaganda storm. Paul Revere's engraving spread the outrage, and Boston would never forget that night. After the bloodshed in Boston, many braced for total collapse, expecting mobs, riots, or at least someone throwing another snowball with bad intentions. But surprisingly, not everyone wanted the revolution to explode overnight. In Massachusetts, Governor Thomas Hutchinson tried the "let's not burn the city down" approach. He pulled British troops out of Boston and insisted the shooters stand trial. Their lawyer? None other than John Adams, a patriot defending redcoats. Only in colonial America. Across the Atlantic, Britain switched to a new prime minister, Lord North, a man who passionately believed Parliament should always get the last word. Yet even he couldn't ignore the economic damage from colonial boycotts. So he repealed the hated Townshend taxes, except for tea, because apparently someone in London really loved tea. For a brief moment, calm returned. The boycott ended, the crisis faded, but everyone sensed it. This was only the eye of the storm. New England had never been famous for patience, and by the early 1770s, its patience with British rule is running on fumes. Merchants who live by the sea feel London breathing down their necks, tightening trade rules as if daring them to rebel. Smugglers like John Hancock, who practically turned tax evasion into a local sport, now find Royal Navy warships poking around their ships as if they owned the harbor. Then comes the final insult. Smugglers stopped, not by local juries, but by stern Vice Admiralty courts that don't care how charming your lawyer is. And New Englanders, they don't sulk, they explode. In 1772, the Sons of Liberty board the British schooner Gaspee and set it ablaze, sending London a smoky message. Try controlling us now. In Britain, the biggest corporation of the empire, the mighty East India Company, was somehow managing to look powerful and bankrupt at the same time. After decades of dominating trade from India to China, it suddenly needed Parliament to rescue it. With tea. A lot of tea. Enough tea to drown a small town. So in 1773, London unveiled its brilliant plan. Allow the company to dump dirt-cheap tea directly into the American colonies, undercut every smuggler in New England, and still slip in a tiny tax, just 3 pence a pound. They won't even notice, Parliament thought. Parliament was wrong. To patriots, this wasn't a bargain. It was a trap wrapped in a teapot. No taxation without representation wasn't just a slogan anymore. It was a reflex. As 7 tea-filled ships crossed the Atlantic, carrying 250 tons of political disaster, the Sons of Liberty sprang into action. By the time one ship reached Philadelphia, thousands of angry locals promised absolute misery for anyone who tried to unload even a single crate. Most captains wisely turned their ships around. The fuse had been lit, and the revolution was beginning to boil. Boston, December 1773, where calm negotiations go to die. Governor Thomas Hutchinson, tired of boycotts and enough political drama, he ensures that 3 company ships enter the harbor. 3 East India Company ships are ushered into the harbor like honored guests at the worst party in America. But that night, the Sons of Liberty board the ships, disguised as Native Americans. Not subtle, but definitely iconic. With theatrical flair, they smash open 340 chests of tea and pour 92,000 pounds of Britain's prized brew straight into the harbor. Today, that's nearly $2 million sinking in caffeinated glory. Patriots celebrate the Boston Tea Party as a heroic stand. According to Patriot lawyer John Adams, this is the most magnificent movement of all. There is a dignity, a majesty, a sublimity in this last effort of the Patriots that I greatly admire. The people should never rise without doing something to be remembered, something notable and striking. But across the ocean, Britain is not applauding. To them, it's vandalism, mob rule, and a direct punch to imperial authority. London finally decides, enough theatrics. If the colonies want to play rough, Britain will show them what rough really means. The gloves come off, and history is about to boil hotter than any pot of tea dumped in Boston Harbor.